Everyone here is trying to sell you something. I am not yet. And without corporate sponsors, I can say anything that I want. I can say words like. So while I'm still an unattached adolescent YouTuber without any corporate influence or oversight, I thought I would share the 10 filmmaker YouTube tips that I think you can ignore. Again, this is just my personal opinion, but they're just some things where people spend too much time worrying about them and they don't really matter. Or they can matter, just be intentional. Maybe I would be the worst influencer. I hate buying new cameras, new gear, new equipment, because in my mind, time equals money. So if I'm spending money on things willy-nilly, that means that I'm just giving away my time without too much thought. This is exciting. And look, it's my first listicle. I am so excited to bear my listicle to you. This takes a lot of trust. And take all of these points with a grain of salt. This is just my perspective and has come from me thinking about these things probably way too much. And I would love to hear your response or your counterpoints to it, so please share. So let's get on with my listicle before it shrivels away to nothing. It seems like a gimbal is in every videographer's kit except for mine, and I'm doing okay. If we're speaking generally, a gimbal adds a lot of slickness or a lot of awesome to a shot. I personally like handheld. It feels like you're part of the action, a human perspective. Gimbals, I find, erase this. And if you're like me, you've wondered in the past why your handheld doesn't feel like Hollywood handheld. Essentially, it just comes down to our cameras are too light. When I first started shooting video, I was shooting with a Canon 5D. It was incredible. It was that camera that you could switch from photo mode to video mode. But that camera had a lot of rolling shutter, which gave your images a really loose, jello-y feel. The other problem with a light camera like this that I'm filming on a Sony a7S III is that it's really light and it can go up and down and left and right really easy, but it can also rotate. And this is not something you find on Hollywood cameras because they're so heavy. They're usually on a shoulder mount or locked to someone's body. In the early days trying to figure this out, I built my own Steadicam with some bent aluminum and some RC parts, and it worked great, but I didn't find myself using it at all. I just still loved handheld shots, or I was always using a tripod. As it turned out, I didn't want a Steadicam or a gimbal. I wanted a heavier camera. I grew up watching French New Wave films. They're the films that made me fall in love with filmmaking. The French New Wave came right at a time when cameras were just portable enough that you could run around a city with them. So you get scenes like the running scene from Jules and Jim. It wouldn't have the same life to me if it was shot on a Steadicam. But you can argue the opposite as well. The Shining made the first beautiful use of a Steadicam. It was incredibly unsettling. So in all of this, take it with a grain of salt, but make a considered choice. A house in a real estate tour always needs to look better than it actually is. A bride always wants her wedding day to look more magical than it is. The gimbal is going to do that. So we talked about gimbals and handheld, but there's another way to do things. It's just locked off shots on a tripod. They're the best way to build a great composition. If a gimbal is your default choice, try something truly handheld. Turn off stabilization and just weigh down your camera. I did a job with a friend, Jeff. We went to Guatemala on a coffee sourcing trip, and it was on the original Blackmagic pocket camera. I put it on a homemade gun stock mount, put a big V-mount battery on it, just trying to add as much weight as possible. So try it. Turn off stabilization, get your camera off a gimbal, weigh down your rig, give it a try. So I love music. It's all over all of my YouTube videos. I use Epidemic Sound, and it's cool because this is not plug or anything. You can download what's called stems, so I can just use the drum track or just the bass track. So I can build music throughout. But another really great creative choice is not having music at all. One of the first videos I put in my portfolio was for a brewery, and they just wanted me to document the process of making a poster. It was a letterpress printing press. I was standing on these heavy presses. I was right up there getting these really cool shots, beautiful window light. And by the time I got to the edit, I was just listening to the clickety-clack of the machines, and I knew that that's what this piece needed. And it makes the piece, and all of the audio was just through the pinhole reference mic. I'll keep using music. I use it in most things, but I just like to keep the possibility open that I don't need to. One of my favorite YouTube channels is called Not Just Bikes. I'm a little bit of an urban planning nerd. He's got a really great droll, sarcastic delivery, but it's overlaid over the real sounds of the cities that he's talking about. And I think back to watching Castaway. No matter how many times you see it, 3/4 of the way through the movie, it's almost over when the music first hits. The Coen brothers have made films with little to no music. Hitchcock was sort of known for that. Music does not need to be a default choice. Other times I start a project very clearly knowing the song I want. I did a short film called Home Position, and I knew I wanted a jazz drum solo in it. And so I talked to a friend who's a great drummer, and he recorded a track for me, and it was a lot of fun. I shot a fun short film with a Sasquatch in it with my friends Maddie and Tyler. While I was writing the script, I was hearing in my head that Paul Simon song, Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. And I even used it as the cutting track for the earlier cuts, but reality set in, we couldn't use the song. So do you need music? No. Will it help? Usually. Can it be great without it? For sure. Even all of these stupid YouTube videos, I don't add music until I fully cut my talking head portion. I just want to know that what I'm saying is meaningful, that it's working, that it's flowing, and then I'll start to think about music. I mentioned my Canon 5D earlier, and it was great. Got to turn on that video mode, and we told the world about it. We ran through the streets and screamed about our shallow depth of field. But in hindsight, I feel like there was something else that made a bigger difference than photo lenses and their creamy bokeh. There are words that my mouth just doesn't like saying, and bokeh is one of them, especially if you put the word creamy before it. Sort of like the word moist in bokeh. Bokeh is the quality of the out of focus areas of an image. And don't get me wrong, I love like the swirly background blur that I get from my Yashica TLR or my old Soviet lenses. I love it. But when it comes to the 5D, there was one change that I feel made an even bigger difference. I remember a firmware update that they released that let you shoot 24 frames a second. To me, that was the true feeling that, oh, this is starting to feel like a movie. This doesn't feel like video anymore. So being able to control your depth of field is a great tool, but if you're just hiding messes in background blur, it's going to start to give itself away. There's lots of great films that were shot in 16mm. If you think about sensor sizes, 16mm is tiny compared to this full frame sensor I'm shooting this stupid vlog on, which means you need wider lenses, which brings the background into focus a lot more. So films like Carol or Black Swan, there's lots of shots in them with deep focus. Shallow depth of field is not what's going to make your movie a movie. You don't need an f.95 lens. That's not going to change things for you. What you need is better composition. One of the most persistent things that bothers me about our content world is cutting to the beat. The idea of cutting visuals and music to the same timing kind of makes like a bit of logical sense, but in practice it gets really old really fast. Our brains love finding patterns. So cutting to the beat is a pattern that makes sense, but just as much as we love patterns, we get really sick of them. Your brain knows what's coming and gets bored. If there's anyone that's going to get replaced by an AI, it's an editor who cuts to the beat. Editing is its own music that follows its own course and shouldn't be tied to an arbitrary rhythm of a song. Each shot needs its own perfect time. I've sat with editors who've labored over, should we cut on this frame or this frame, and they wish that they could cut in between those two frames. This is where editing transcends, when it's something special, when you can feel so deeply inside yourself of where an edit needs to be that you're arguing with a computer about it. Now, this doesn't mean you can't edit to the beat. I still do sometimes, but if a sequence is a sentence, cutting to the beat is a form of punctuation. If you use it too much, it's going to be too sweet. People are going to get sick of it. You need to be willing to find the flow and cut with your gut, not your brain. This novelty wears off so fast in the human brain, which is why you see so much of it on TikTok. And a lot of those folks are going to get away with it. Let them have it. Us over here, we want to build stories that are interesting for more than 10 seconds, and we can do better. So I'm talking about this, and I just bought a new camera, but you don't need to buy a new camera. Let someone else. My sort of point here is that a lot of people feel like, oh, if I just get this camera, then I can make my film, then I can shoot my film. If I just get a better computer, if I get a this or I get a that, if I spend money, if I throw money at something that's promising it'll help me, that's all I need. When really, if you want to be a director, if you want to be a filmmaker, you just need to spend more time writing. Just be wary of this thought of, when I get a camera, when I get this thing is going to be the thing that helps me do my thing. Buy equipment on a need, not a possibility. Do you have that film ready to go? And is that camera truly the last piece? Or should you spend time working on your script or packaging your production that you want to create? If you have a vision that people are excited about helping you with, if you have a creative that you want to ask favors for, as long as you're not taking advantage of people, a cinematographer who has a camera is going to say, hey, I'll help you with that. Actors will come out and say, I want to be a part of this. People will be excited to contribute. It's not going to hinge on a camera. It's going to hinge on you and your ideas. When I go to a commercial shoot, I walk into the room with nothing. Well, I don't. I actually have a clipboard for all of my shoots that I have my boards on so I can cross out what we've shot and what I can take notes on. I come from a DIY background, and I love the equipment. I know a lot of directors who come from a writing background who never really touch a camera ever, and they lean on other departments to fill those gaps. The limit is not gear. While I was writing this, I was thinking about, what is the light that peeks out in February and your cat is always looking for? And that light is the sun, and the sun is definitely not a soft light. When I do commercials, a lot of times we're on a location in a house or in a building, and the DP, the cinematographer, the first light they'll set up is a big one outside that feels like that perfect sun. I did a video a few months ago about minimalism, and part of it was just an exercise in playing with a new hard light I bought and how I could sort of mimic sunlight. I was probably only successful with about 20% of the shots. There's a feeling that comes with sunlight and real hard light that is really great. So while I'm shooting with a soft light here, in fact, it's a little cheap, flimsy light disc in front of a makeup tutorial ready ring light. Hard light is a lot of fun. You don't always have to start with an artificial, big, soft source. Start with everyone's favorite hard light, the sun. Going along with the gimbal, you don't need a drone. Well, I have a drone. I have the little Mavic drone or whatever. It's like a few years old. And for me, it's just really fun to fly. I don't fly it that much. And I've tried to get a few shots, mainly just for this YouTube channel. When it comes to my general work, if a gimbal is taking them out spiritually, a drone is literally getting a shot from a wildly inhuman angle, which is great if you need an establishing shot and that's what you see in your head, get it. But I know enough people with really great drones that I don't need to buy one. If I need an establishing shot for a short film, I'll get my friend Chris, who's got a drone, who's got insurance, and can make a flight plan. My point is just be intentional. Maybe you do real estate videos and the drone is what really sets you apart and makes these homes look fancier than they are. Then yeah, get a drone. It'll pay for itself. It's great. You don't have to. You can if you want, but you don't have to. You don't have to do anything. Above all, you don't have to listen to me. Maybe you love FPV drones. They look like a riot. Maybe you want to shoot things like Michael Bay. That is totally fine. It's great. Then do it. Dive in. Have fun. People always argue about new cameras with these incredible specs or whatever, and I just think about, okay, how would I use that? And one of those things is 120 frames per second. You don't need 120 frames per second. Maybe you do. I don't need it. This camera can do it. It can do 240, I think. It's insane, but I don't really need it. Outside of special commercials where we've needed something to fall or food to fall at a certain rate. But for like an everyday camera, it's so low on my consideration list. Coming from like a docu-commercial background, sometimes I feel like if you need a lot of slow motion to tell your story, maybe the story isn't worth telling. That's why I use it in a lot of my commercial docu-style work, because it's marketing. You know, we're trying to make things look better than they really are. And slow motion is sort of that crutch you lean on. But I try actively to not use it. In a commercial we recently needed a slow-mo shot. We tried it out at 48 frames a second, which you would say is not that slow motion. But it felt too slow-mo for me. I've sort of weaned myself off of it. Met in the middle at 40 frames a second. But those are sort of like the nuanced places my brain is working, where a lot of times, you know, I'll shoot slow motion at 36 frames a second and it's just a bit of magic. I even shoot things at 30 frames a second and then slow them down. It almost feels real, but it just adds a little hint of magic without like beating you over the head with it. And then when you start watching 120 frames per second slow motion, it's just absurdly slow. 30 frames per second is where all the cool kids are these days. You should give it a try. I have a Canon R5 that I use for stills. It'll shoot 8K video, which is apparently a cool thing. I've never taken a video on it except for like accidentally. But when am I ever gonna use an 8K video if I need to blow something up? But it's just gonna look weird. I have this A7S III and it goes up to 4K. That's where it maxes out. And even that is too sharp for me. The movie Lady Bird, which won some Oscars a few years ago, I think, I don't know. It was a really great film, and they shot it on an Alexa. They shot it at HD, and not only that, they underexposed everything so that when they boosted it in the color grade, it added this sort of like digital grain to it. So they're like trying their hardest to break down a digital image because it's just too sharp. 12K sensors are from this world of like, oh, we need options, we're indecisive. If you need a 12K sensor for a specialized reason, I'd love to hear it. Like I said, the gear is not going to make or break what you want to say. So those are my 8 or 6 or 10, I don't know. I don't count. I wasn't counting. Whatever I edited together, that's how many there were. Those are my points about things that you can choose to ignore or maybe aren't as important as companies and YouTubers tell you they are. So if you caught one point drifting its way through all of this, it's that you should just be intentional in your choices. Be decisive. Be open to learn and reflect on whether that was a good choice, and be open to making a better choice next time. This is a craft, an art that you can only get better at by doing. You can read about specs, you can read about theory, you can listen to my YouTube channel or anyone else's, but none of it is going to really matter until you pick up a camera to try and fail and learn from your mistakes and do it better next time and even better the time after that. And pretty soon you'll look back on what you thought was important, 12K sensors or 240 frames per second slow motion or whatever this new camera was, and realize you had way bigger fish to fry. Or just go out there and shoot weddings on a 12K camera strapped to a gimbal on a drone at f.95 shooting 240 frames a second. Cut that shit to the beat of the hottest synthwave track and give the bride what she wants and get paid.